What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about flowcharts. Yes, I know. Aren't you so excited? Something you've probably been waiting for your entire life. Let's talk about flowcharts. Yes, I know. This is great. This is going to be so much fun. Make sure you get out your pen, your paper, but most importantly, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, show some love. Hey guys, my name is Chris Channa, the founder and CEO of Active Age Daytime Senior Care, and we're gonna talk about how to take flowcharts and turn them into cash flow. You know, this is something that I came across probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I had never even really heard of a flowchart, much less knew how to actually create a flowchart. And I remember like speaking with someone about this topic, and they were expressing like, yeah, you know, just make some flowcharts. And I'm like, what is a flowchart? So I'm like looking it up, and I'm like trying to understand like, well, what do I do here? How do I do that? And like at the time, it didn't make a lot of sense. But what I realized is when I started compartmentalizing different areas of my business, you know, it became very clear to me that flowcharts really do help you create systems and procedures for your business. And so I wanted to kind of walk through some, kind of examples as to maybe what are some areas of your company that you might have a flowchart, and then, how would you go about creating that flowchart? What would that look like? What would that process look like? So this might be a little bit more in depth. To some, this might be boring. To others, this might be super helpful, especially if you're starting out and you're starting a new business and you don't even know like what your plans are for how you're going to handle leads, how you're gonna handle, onboarding new employees, how you're gonna handle, bringing on new members and taking care of those new members as they start at your adult daycare. So before we get into it, let's kind of like dive in. We'll break down each one of these, different categories and kind of really go a little bit deeper into the decision-making process. So if you're thinking about leads, which is going to be like the starting point of any business, is like, okay, what do I do with my leads? How do I get them? And then when I have them, what do I do with them? So being able to create a system, a funnel about how you're going to handle your leads is going to be very important. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to maybe get a whiteboard, get a scratch pad of paper with an actual pencil, something you can use to erase and kind of like go back and forth and think about. But what you're going to do is you're going to take, okay, the new lead comes in, and now you're going to like think about, okay, well, what happens if I make contact with that new lead? And then what happens if I don't make contact with that new lead? And so you're going to create this chart like, okay, new lead comes in. Yes, I made contact. No, I did not. And at each decision point, you might do something differently. Okay, so yes, you made contact. Well, what is the next step? Okay, schedule a tour. That probably makes sense. Did you do that? Say you book the tour and then they don't show up. What happens if they don't show up? What happens if they do show up, right? So this is, you're going down the yes, so the yes, you made contact, yes, you booked them a tour, now they didn't show up, or yes, they did show up, then what happens after that? And this thing gets longer and longer, bigger and bigger, and whether you go horizontal or vertical, however you do it, it doesn't really matter. The reality of it is that you have an idea of, okay, well, when someone comes to this point in time, we do this, and when they go over here, we do that. So say you did not make contact with that lead, then what is the plan for how you're gonna follow up via call, email, and text? Is it right away? Is it 1 day later? Is it 2 days later? And then is it the following week? Like, what is the plan? Like, how often and in what way and what frequency are you going to follow up with that lead until you hear from them? So what does that plan look like because then what happens is now say you go out this way and then you make contact, you go back here and start this process, right? So you move to a different part of the flowchart. But what this does is it creates a kind of a plan, a game plan of how you're gonna handle your leads. And this is gonna allow you to create better systems, better procedures that is gonna make it easier for your own team to manage the flow of new leads coming through the system and having an understanding of what we do at each stage in the pipeline. Okay, so you're gonna have maybe now that lead has become a new member. Like, what's your plan for onboarding a new member? Okay, so obviously there's paperwork that's given. Did they complete the paperwork? Do you need to remind them about the paperwork? Is there paperwork that's due ahead of time? Is there paperwork that's due within 30 days? Do you need to send out an invoice? Do you need to collect billing information? Do you need to have stuff for their file? Like, what are those things? But think through those steps. Okay, what is the paperwork here? Okay, so then the member onboarding process is like, okay, they sign up, they fill out this form, and then they get these steps. And then after these steps are complete, then they go here. And after this is complete, then we go there. And you create this entire thing all the way to the point where you have everything you need for that new member, okay? But you're creating kind of like, okay, yes, no, they did this, they didn't do that. Okay, after we complete this step, we go here. But if they didn't complete this step, then we go over here, okay? And you create this flow chart of just the entire onboarding process for new members. When it comes to new employees, okay, the applicant comes through the system. Then you have an interview. Then you have, a follow-up call. Do you get other people on your team involved? Is it just you that does the interviewing? Is someone else allowed to do the interviewing? What does that employee onboarding process look like? Once you make the hire, what happens after they're hired? How do you handle the training process? What kind of training do you have for them? And then, how often would they receive that training? At what point in time after they start with you, do they start the training process? There's all of these things. Every state might have some requirements that the state requires, and then there might be things that is specific to the fact that you're in adult daycare, and then you might have things that are specific to you. But you're gonna have to create that flow chart of how is that process set up. And same with operations, right? You're gonna create a diagram, kind of a flow chart for the decision tree, right? So you have your administrator, and then you might have someone that's in charge of, the leads and the tours and those types of things, or is that person you? Either way, you're gonna create a decision tree of okay, here's this bucket, and in this bucket, here's these responsibilities. And then here's this bucket, and in this bucket, there's these responsibilities. Because you might have someone in charge of your meals. You might have someone in charge of your medications. You might have someone in charge of just the general care. You might have someone in charge of activities. You might have someone in charge of, marketing. And then, so you have all of these different buckets that you have to kind of outline as, okay, well, what does that go under? So maybe there's a care bucket, but then underneath the care bucket, you have helping to the restroom, and you have, assisting someone, in activities, assisting someone with meals, right? So under that care bucket, what does that decision tree look like? Is there full autonomy for everyone to make all the decisions? Or do they need to report to someone at a certain point in time? So what does that whole thing look like? And I know this is a much more in-depth flow chart. You might start out with a simple organizational chart, which helps you identify what strategic hires you're going to need. And then under those strategic hires, you might kind of create some sort of decision tree framework for them that allows them to, create and give some autonomy to, each individual person on their team, so they don't have to always come back and forth to that person. And then this way, you have created a very clear and concise understanding of how you handle all of these processes. And now you actually have standards and operating procedures, SOPs, that you can implement and give to your team to help run the organization smoothly. And this way you always have a reference to go back to and be like, oh yeah, remember we agreed on this. This is what we outlined. This is what we agreed upon together. Do we need to keep it, or do we need to change it? Do we need to update it? This a lot of times becomes something that's always changing depending on you and how you're growing. Because what you might do in the very, very beginning versus what you might do 5 or 10 years into your business is going to be very different. So this is constantly evolving, but I think it's very important as you're thinking about opening up your very own adult daycare that you at least start understanding what a flowchart is, how it can work, and how it can help you. So that being said, guys, hope this was helpful. I know this was not the most exciting stuff. I mean, who really wants to talk about flowcharts, really, But as a visual learner myself, sometimes I need someone to break these things down and give me examples. Show me how to do something, because it helps me learn. So hopefully this was helpful to you, but I appreciate all your guys' support and all the love and stuff that you share on this channel. Super grateful for all of you. Thank you. If you haven't already and you'd like to open up your very own adult daycare, go to adcpro.com. Join our monthly webinars, join our private Facebook group, comment, subscribe to all of our YouTube content. We got that stuff going out every day, every single day of the week. And we cannot thank you guys enough. I got to go. It's time to call it a wrap. Anyways, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Peace. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to learn how to open your own adult daycare center, go to adcpro.com. If you'd like the latest business tips, click here, and make sure you subscribe to our channel, click here. We'll see you guys next time.